don't really have to adjust your body's posture, but just focus on your spinal column. Pressing the tail end downward, stretching the top end upward, and noticing how the rest of your body simply follows with its balance. And this is a practice where you don't need too much effort, at least not within your muscles. So if you like, you can release intentions that you would like the muscles to loosen themselves. You'd like your joints to loosen themselves. You'd like the skin to loosen itself. And basically what we're doing is we're just releasing the hold, the control that we normally exert over our bodies. Because more often than not, this exertion, this control we believe we are exerting over our bodies, it's a message to the immune system that I know how to take care of my body. I know what's right for my body. And I don't want you to do anything for me. And in many ways, by loosening the body, by releasing our hold on it, we're not really releasing it, but we're simply surrendering it back to that intelligence within our body that knows exactly how to balance, repair. Let's remind ourselves about this practice now. I know we've come here to meditate. I know we've come here to possibly practice something called mindfulness. We all have different reasons for being here. To be closer to God, to be more truly ourselves, to be free of stress. But let's release all of these motivating factors, these reasons for being here, so that we no longer need to meditate. Because meditation, the word meditation, is a label, and it comes with certain expectations, presumptions. You may believe your mind may need to be still. You may need to experience peace. Your body may need to be still. And so we release that label. We release the label of mindfulness. We release all the expectations we have of a practice such as this. Everything from enlightenment to being stress-free. And once we've shaved all of these expectations, we seem to be left with two very simple functions. Just sitting, just breathing. We're here to sit and breathe. But first, let's take stock of who we believe this person here is, this person whose body is sitting. There have been many different experiences. We've all had very unique set of parents. We've been through different routes, different schools. We've all read different books. Many different experiences, and they all pass. Right now, as you hear my words, you might see it all flash past you. And as we find our bodies seated here, let's also notice whether we have. It's very likely we've brought many of these beliefs here into this space right now, where we find ourselves sitting and breathing. There are the family circumstances, financial circumstances, work, some of our accumulations, who we believe we are. Very much connected to our bodies, the way we look, our gender, and even more connected to all of these beliefs, the conversations, the thoughts we've been keeping, the thoughts we've been fed. Meditation, or this practice rather. I wasn't supposed to use the word meditation, but this practice. In this practice, we go back to who we once were, who we were before we started thinking and accumulating these beliefs. This is a practice where we return back to who we are, free of all beliefs. So your education becomes irrelevant. Your form becomes irrelevant. The way you look, it's no longer relevant. What the room you're in looks like, whether you've got expensive fixtures or whether it's got absolutely nothing in it, it becomes irrelevant. Bank accounts become irrelevant. Our family relationships become irrelevant. Where we begin to find, or rather remind ourselves of the tools that we have that would enable us to suspend our surroundings. And so everything that you can feel right now, that you remember right now, other than the fact that you are sitting and breathing, you can consider one of those stories. The education, that conversation you had with someone, whether usually it's someone very dear to you. The conversations, they're all stories. And what we are going to focus on is just the simple fact that we're sitting here and breathing. And it begins with us reminding ourselves that there are three parts to us. At least we're going to assume that there are three parts to us. The first is the body. the body that is seated here, breathing, but the body that is important because it has 5 doorways that will lead us into this present moment, where everything we've ever been looking for is. The body seated here, breathing. And then that other part, the mind. And this might be a nice time to notice where your mind is. Because more often than not, the mind is the entity that carries the stories, the history, the projections into the future, and sometimes jumping in between both of those, completely missing the present moment. And so usually at the start of a practice, it's nice to just watch the movie, watch the mind as though it was a movie, a story with many different actors. One of those actors look and sound a lot like you, and when you see that, it's going to try to tempt you back into identifying and becoming an actor in the movie. But during this practice, we're going to learn that we actually have the remote control is in our hand. Sometimes we might choose to change the channel, choose a different thought. Sometimes we might wish to simply hit the mute button so that it plays, but in the background, no longer disturbing you as much as it was when the voices were too loud. But if the mind was like a movie with stories and scripts and soundtracks and voices and images, who is observing? Who is observing this movie? Who is observing the stories? And that's the third part. It has many labels. Teachers like Eckhart Tolle, they call it the present moment. Other teachers like the Buddha called it awareness, witnessing presence. And for some of us, it's what some religions call God. That intrinsic part of the observer, the witnesser, consciousness itself, which exists, the closest way in which to locate this presence, this witnessing presence called the present moment, is by simply accessing it through our senses. And I'm going to ring the bell now. So when I ring the bell, begin using your sense of hearing to access this present moment. When I stroke this bell, a chain reaction of vibrating air molecules are created. They seem to travel through my microphone and out of your speakers and into your ears. And even as they enter your ears, as they move down the passages at the side of your head, They haven't picked up any meanings yet. They're just vibrating air molecules. And then they reach the inner part of the ear where the eardrums are. And then vibrations begin to take place within the ear, and the tiny little bones on the other side of the eardrum, they begin to vibrate. And then they somehow translate themselves into electrical signals that move through the brain. And they're still nothing but electrical signals, vibrating air molecules. And then it reaches the mind. Somehow the mind, we can consider that separate entity, the mind, as a filter through which a library of information exists. And then you begin to realize and recognize this is the sound of the bell, and it's quite a familiar sound, and you might either like it or dislike it, and then you notice the way it echoes. But what's beginning to happen also is that your mind, my mind, it's beginning to leave those stories from the past, and it's beginning to enter into the present moment. It's beginning to assist our body in deciphering and giving meaning to these sounds. And that's a good thing, because it's leaving its stories behind and it's beginning to tap into the present moment, which is why some of us are beginning to feel the stillness that arrives, that's always been here in this moment. It's always been here. It's who we are. And even the worries that you had about the future, whether your own or someone else's, the mind, it begins to leave those stories. Those two we're going to call stories, and it's beginning to arrive into this moment. And as you notice the sound fade into the background, let us visualize our awareness, because awareness, it's a word again. It's a word, and it means different. It has different meanings to each and every one of us here. So let us visualize awareness as a light. And we'll call it the light of awareness. And so begin to feel your ears becoming brighter, fusing into the light that's entering in through your windows, or maybe the bulbs around you. But nevertheless, energy, molecules, atoms. And because as this light, as it bathes your earlobes, you also ignite your sense of touch, your ability to sense the temperature through your earlobes, through your ears. You might be able to detect, it's very sensitive, you might be able to detect the movement in the air around you as it brushes against your ears. And then visualize this light moving deeper into your ears, down the passage, so that you now begin to notice all of the sounds that are unfolding at this second, and then this second, and from moment to moment, inviting the whole symphony of sounds that are reaching your experience through your sense of hearing, so that the present moment is beginning to reveal itself to you through these sounds. And the secret to this practice is to notice what happens when these sounds get filtered through the mind. Very often there are judgments. Sometimes the mind is simply helping us to identify, like, I'm near to my kitchen, so I can hear the fridge and the freezer humming. I can hear birds singing outside my window in the distance. What can you hear? And sometimes you'll find you may like some sounds. Other sounds might be completely neutral. And for others, you may simply dislike them and wish for them to go away. The first step is to simply notice these judgments as separate. And if you can picture yourself using sticky labels, when you see a judgment such as, I don't like that sound, just scribble the word don't like it, or too loud, or too soft, or unpleasant, or a mobile phone, or voices, footsteps, or roadworks, and just stick it on that thought, that judgment, visualizing it to be like a bubble floating by, stabilizing yourself. And if it continues disturbing you, then simply giving it permission to exist, allowing it to exist. You can even visualize yourself embracing it, inviting it into your body, knowing that it can't actually stay in the body and it will simply travel through the body, which is itself made up of atoms and molecules, no different from the air, but simply arranged in a different way. And so our body is becoming transparent to these sounds. And if there is still a sound that's disturbing you, it's good, because it's allowing you to discover which parts of the body are still quite tense and tight and not as allowing as you would like it to be. And when that happens, simply breathing into that little pocket of tightness and resistance within the body, cradling your breath there for a brief moment, and then breathing out and releasing. And now, this light of awareness, it's illumined the whole passage, all the tiny bones within the ear. And now it begins, let's invite it to expand from the ears into the sides of the head. Just keep it at the surface level, so the skin. So from the earlobes, the light spreads into the sides of the scalp, the top of the scalp, the back of the head, so that all you're aware of right now is the way in which the skin connects to your earlobes, how the skin, it envelops the upper regions of the head. It has hair follicles in it, and you might even feel the weight of the hair. It's how it feels on the scalp. And we simply infuse this light of awareness with certain qualities, such as ease, allowing, comfort, warmth, relaxation. Feeling this light bathe every hair follicle. Feeling the skin loosen itself. Noticing how the scalp connects to the forehead. And so you begin noticing your eyebrows relaxing themselves. You notice the skin and the muscle underneath your forehead loosening itself. And this light, it gently begins to gravitate downwards through your face. So from the eyebrows, it moves down the eyelids, almost as though it was a liquid light flowing down the eyelids and down the facial muscles and into the nose, the lips, the whole facial expression. You're beginning to become aware of your facial expression and the way in which the muscles are sitting. And as this light bathes all of these facial muscles, you again release an intention to loosen the muscles, to loosen the bone underneath. Of course, I'm referring just to the jawbone. Loosening the muscles within the eyelids and the eyes. And this light, it begins to gravitate inward through the face region, inward through the scalp region, through the skull, that bone, the muscle underneath, the back of the head, the side, until it soon reaches the brain. It reaches the deepest parts within the eyes. It reaches the inner regions of the ears. And this light, which is infused with these qualities of, let's add kindness, whatever kindness means to you. And with kindness, a smile always emanates, and so allow your lips to take whatever form they would choose to. This light, it reaches deeper into the mouth, where you begin to notice your tongue and its relationship with the gums, its relationship with the teeth, the relationship between the teeth and the gums and the lips and the tongue. Aware of the process whereby saliva is produced. And then noticing, following the saliva as it moves down the throat, so that you now begin to experience your neck. Your neck being touched by these light, reaching towards the back where the spinal column is. Noticing how the spinal column connects with the skull, and the whole brain region connected to the spinal column, and simply releasing an intention that this light, it reaches every region within the brain without us having to do anything, just through the intention that is being released. And as this light fuses with the brain, it seems to know exactly what needs to be done in order to balance certain parts of the body. Most of our bodily functions controlled through the brain. And so this light of awareness bringing ease, comfort, and kindness to this whole region. Maybe even feeling the weight of the brain as the muscles around it begin to loosen. Feeling the brain illuminate, filled with this light of awareness, which almost becomes so vivid and powerful that it begins to shine outward. The skin and the form around the face and the scalp dissolving so that the light merges with the light around us, so that this light merges into the space around us. And then back to the neck. And this light now spreading down the spinal column where we had started our practice. This light moving down the spine, vertebra by vertebra. And if you do need to adjust your posture, then feel free to do so. But noticing how the spinal column, it seems to communicate with you, letting you know what balance is, what alignment is. You notice its arch, you notice the way in which it sits on the pelvic bone. And as it aligns, as the spinal column finds ease and balance, the fluids, the energies, and all else within the spinal column flowing more smoothly than it's ever flowed before, repairing, balancing, and bringing healing to our bodies. And this light now spreading into the shoulders, so that your shoulders, you find your shoulders as they are enveloped by this light, you find the shoulder muscles dissolving and loosening themselves. You find them falling under the weight of your arms. And as your arms drop, you begin to visualize this light flowing down your chest, down your back, down your arms all the way to the tips of the fingers, the chest muscles, the upper back muscles, spreading through all of the organs in between these two groups of muscles. That would include lungs, the heart, perhaps even picking up on the beating of the heart, its vibration. And like a like a waterfall, but one made out of light, one consisting of light, flowing down through the mid-regions of our body, reaching into the digestive system, everything that's going on within the stomach, where most of the digestive process takes place, which keeps us healthy, the extraction of nutrition, where sometimes many of us feel worry and stress, that feeling of butterflies, allowing this light to reach through this region and balance and relax, and return this whole region to that sense of ease that it's always known about, but sometimes forgot. The stomach muscles, the muscles around the lower back, and then this seeking no longer to contain this light so that it flows through the pelvic region. It flows down the legs. It spends a few seconds inside of the joint, the knee joint, bathing the knee joint, both right and left, lubricating it, repairing it. This joint that keeps us active and allows us to move about comfortably. Very often we find ourselves with all sorts of chronic physical conditions, pains, joint pains. But this is a practice where every moment becomes a new beginning and an only moment. And we remind ourselves how cells are constantly being regenerated. Old cells are disappearing. The same way this person who is now inhabits this body looks, talks, and acts so differently from the young child and the young baby that once inhabited. Not this body, but a different body. And so the body is constantly undergoing change. Our ability to heal ourselves from within, repair, recreate our bodies, rebuild our bodies, cell by cell. And so this light of awareness, it reaches through the joints, down the calves and the shin, through the ankles, into the feet, all the way down into the tips of the toes, so that you now know that this light has reached every cell of your body, and you return to that point where we started, sitting and breathing. But now a body of light, a body of awareness. And we spoke about breathing. Notice your breath flowing in through your nostrils and reaching those lungs which are so infused with light, so much so that every time you exhale and you breathe out, the air that is released, that too becomes infused with this light, and soon this light, it begins to spread like a mist, like an inky mist around us, into the space around us, so that not only are we releasing light, but we're also breathing in the very same light that is entering in through our windows, the very same light that is in the garden outside and the streets outside, infused with this light which is flowing through every cell. And now when I ring the bell, with each bell, feel your form dissolving a little bit more, and merging into this light. If you're a visual person, then it's almost as though your body, your form was fading with each bell. Fading in a way that where the borders no longer, it's a bit like a blurring, where you're beginning to find it pointless to even attempt to distinguish your body from this air and this space around you. And because light is energy, it can travel through the windows, even through the walls that appear solid, because we know that even the walls are made up of nothing but atoms and molecules with gaps in between them. And so this energy, it flows outward, and you feel yourself expanding. It doesn't have to be too much, just whatever's outside of this room, corridors, other rooms. And there's always more space through the keyholes, through the little gaps around the windows, even through the glass that seems to let the light in, now letting the light out. The streets outside of us. Let's release a further intention that every living being, that this light reaches. Every living being that this light passes through, it brings some form of comfort, some form of soothing that being has been seeking. And I think we all know that every single one of us, we're looking for something that we feel would soothe us. Examples, if you were lonely, when we feel lonely, we want company, the company of like-minded people. We want to smile, we want to laugh. And so when this light, it reaches people who feel that those droplets of loneliness, we release intentions that this light brings some form of relief to that need. It reaches those who are hungry, and it somehow brings them the perfect nourishment in the form of food and drink. To those who are cold and uncomfortable, it brings them some form of relief in the form of accommodation, comfort, warmth, familiarity, familiar surroundings. For those who are experiencing less than perfect levels of physical health, this light, it brings them comfort, balance, healing, comfort, the perfect remedies. The same way we are discovering our body's own ability to repair. Not everybody believes this, and so some may need medicines, some may need painkillers, some may need other forms of drugs, and we allow this light, completely releasing judgments, allowing it to reach all beings. And it keeps moving at a very high speed, bathing whole regions, the country that you find yourself in, the continent your country is on, or the island. It reaches the seas and other continents, and soon the whole globe, if you can visualize the whole planet, spinning perfectly. Even recognizing that we need do nothing. The planet just seems to be in a state of being. No effort is required from any one of us to keep the planet spinning. A little bit like our breath. It seems to unfold the same way the planet seems to rotate. Our beating heart, our swallowing process, no thought required. All indications of well-being. Let us feel this light bathing the whole planet. Every leaf, every branch on every tree, every nest of every bird and every animal living on the trees. It reaches the surfaces of the oceans, and it reaches underneath that surface into the life existing underneath, and we dive deep into the stillness of these oceans, where it is so much more quieter. Just like this light expanding, expansive, and above the surface of the ocean, where the sky is, reaching the birds in the sky. Not one, not two, but billions and trillions, reaching the top of the mountains, the peaks, the deepest valleys, reaching the clouds, finding the gaps in between the clouds, and spreading upward into the space above the clouds, where the light disappears and all there are just stars, glittering stars in their trillions, perhaps more than there are grains of sand on the planet Earth. And then we begin to recognize the limitations within our mind. The mind no longer has the ability to imagine such space and such quantity. What do we do when we can no longer imagine what infinity is like? This is where I ring the bell and we enter into the present moment, where we begin to step outside of our mind and into awareness itself, which is beyond all of these stars, all of these systems. Feel your body. Feel the surfaces under your body, the chair, the cushion, its softness, its hardness, the way in which your body interacts with it. Feel these sensations expand towards the upper regions of your body which are covered in clothing, just those parts which are covered in clothing, feeling the tightness or the looseness of these fabrics. Feeling the very thin gap of warm air in between the fabric and your skin. And then those exposed areas of skin which seem to indicate the temperature of the space your body occupies. Just sitting, just breathing. Just listening. Inviting these sound waves into and through your bodies, allowing any remaining pockets of stress or tightness to be dissolved by these sound waves. Releasing all need to distinguish your body from the space, not only within these rooms, but the space in the furthest corners of this universe. And now we will hear the final bell. Which as always symbolizes the beginning of our real practice.